Today I got a call to replace an EV charger that had suddenly stopped working. The homeowner said it smelled hot and the charger plug looked burnt. As soon as I walked up to the charger, I knew this wasn't just a simple equipment failure. This was a full-on plug and receptacle meltdown. Let's walk through what happened, why it happened, and how to prevent this from ever happening in your home. Right away, the damage was obvious. The EV charger plug was badly burnt, and the NEMA 1450 receptacle it was plugged into was completely cooked. The plastic around the terminals was charred, the metal contacts were discolored, and the entire assembly looked like it had been overheating for a long time. But here's where things got even more concerning. I checked the receptacle to look for any heavy-duty or EV-rated markings, and there were none. This was just a standard 14 to 50 outlet, not designed for the continuous, high-load demands of EV charging. That alone is enough to cause issues, but unfortunately, this setup had multiple problems stacked on top of each other. Next, I looked at the circuit feeding the charger. This unit is a 40-amp charger, which makes it a continuous load, meaning it needs to be sized at 125% of the rated current. That means it should be on a 50-amp circuit. But it wasn't. It was on a 40-amp breaker, already a major contributor to why this failure happened. Once I removed the receptacle from the box, it became clear the heat damage went far beyond the plug. The conductors behind the outlet were also burnt. This wasn't just a surface problem. The failure traveled into the wiring itself, which is extremely dangerous. While disconnecting everything, I found not one, but 3 more issues with this installation. First, the receptacle wasn't protected by a GFCI breaker, which is a requirement for EV chargers. That alone is a code violation and a major safety risk. Second, the wire feeding the receptacle was 8-3 Romex installed inside conduit. Now, this isn't technically a direct violation, but it's absolutely not best practice. Romex is stiff, insulated for walls, and not meant to be dragged through 60 feet of conduit. Whoever installed this definitely didn't have a fun day. And it's not the type of wiring you want feeding a heavy, continuous load like an EV charger. Third, and maybe the most concerning electrically, the neutral conductor was terminated on the ground bar. Now, yes, in this particular panel, the neutrals and grounds were bonded because it was the first means of disconnect. So technically, the circuit functioned. But relying on the panel enclosure to carry neutral current is poor workmanship, unsafe, and something no electrician should ever do. That choice alone could have created a failure point down the line. Once the receptacle was fully removed, I could really see how bad things were. One of the terminals wasn't even part of the receptacle assembly anymore. It had completely separated from the heat damage. That's how extreme the overheating got. I also compared sections of the copper conductor. One portion still had the normal reddish copper color. That part was still usable. But the more affected section had turned gold. That color change means the copper was overheated to the point where its conductivity might be compromised. When copper gets that hot, the metal anneals, weakens, and can't safely handle its rated current anymore. This wasn't a small failure. This was a system that had been stressed, overheated, and failing for a while. The only safe move was to cut back the damaged wire, pull enough slack into the junction box to eliminate the burnt section, and then prepare the Romex for a proper splice. I installed the new EV charger and cradle, made clean splices to the feed conductors, and tightened everything down properly. To finish the repair, I also replaced the original 40-amp breaker. Even if a breaker looks fine after an event like this, internal heat damage isn't always visible, so it's worth replacing it. Once everything was powered back up, the charger operated normally, but the underlying issue isn't fully solved yet. The customer only wanted the charger replaced for now, but I let them know the feed from the panel really needs to be corrected. This charger should be fed with number 6 THHN conductors in proper conduit, running straight from the panel to the charger's terminals. It also needs a 60-amp breaker, sized correctly for the continuous load, and to allow the charger to operate at full capacity. Until that upgrade is done, the charger has to be limited to 32 amps to prevent another failure. It'll work safely for now, but this setup definitely needs a proper dedicated EV circuit to avoid repeating the same dangerous scenario. I'm Josh. Follow for more.